All these lies and delusions wake me up, show me a new dawn. Open your eyes, rise, children of the light. I am awakened, I am awakened. All these lies and delusions wake me up, show me a new dawn. Open your eyes, rise, children of the light. I am awakened, I am awakened. All these lies and delusions wake me up, show me a new dawn. Open your eyes, rise, children of the light. I am awakened, I am awakened. Clear my mind and my soul. Gave me a new mind. Oh, made me whole. I'll rise up.
Quam.
I'll be a new light.
Quam.
I am awakened.
Quam.
I am awakened.
Quam. Yes, you are.
I am awakened. All these lies and delusions wake me up, show me a new dawn. Open your eyes, rise, children of the light. I am awakened, I am awakened. Israelites journey.
The lessons say emphatically no. Says all of the prophets have tried and none of them was successful. Who do you think you are that God has come to destroy this goddamn bastard and you will get in the way to try to save this bastard? Hell no. Hell no. You get in the way of God's wrath.
And I am a seed of these people that were brought here. These were Israelites.
You know we've been fighting 400 and still fighting to this day. To this day. To this day.
Don't think that you're supposed to let somebody beat you down and destroy you. The Most High gave us a right to fight for our lives.
What does it mean to you, 400 years?
Number one, I'm a descendant of slavery. And because I'm a descendant of slavery, it should mean something to me, especially when I know the truth. So it is not slavery in totality. It's slaves that went to the United States of America. It means that the United States of America is Egypt.
The history of this country too. How many examples would you like me to give you about how this country specializes in that?
This is not a great. This is not a
next
great
year,
pitch.
1619. Next year, 1919, it'll be 400 years since the first Africans were brought to this continent as slaves. So it's not a pitch, it's a reality in this country. And the fact that you're taking such a cavalier attitude about the suffering of black and brown people in this country is appalling.
No, it's not.
It's absolutely appalling.
No,
Are you trying to say that this country does not specialize in racism and bigotry?
I am saying that racism exists. I am saying
exists,
that the United States of America
but you have the luxury. You have the luxury to be cavalier about it. But people, my folks, don't have the luxury
I think
of
the
being
fact
cavalier about it.
Listen, I think the fact
your
that
point.
No, you don't understand my point because you never lived a day in my shoes or the shoes of my ancestors.
What I'm being
This is not a political pitch.
Mary Catherine,
This is reality.
Mary Catherine.
The book of Genesis, chapter 15. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abraham. And lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abraham, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs.
It is too clear for dispute that the enslaved African race were not intended to be included and formed no part of the people who framed and adopted this declaration.
And shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years.
Longer sentences, 3 strikes and you're out. Almost 60 new capital punishment offenses.
Moment comes, go into the situations that we confront with a great deal of dignity, sanity, and reasonableness.
We have been consistently being murdered as a result of police aggression. They generally would excuse it by calling us criminals.
After the collapse of slavery, a new system was born.
And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance.
So black people, what I encourage you to do is to think carefully about how we as a community are going to stop being the leaky bucket of America, because we are the reason that everybody else's economic engine takes off and our tires remain flat and we continue to sit in one spot. So that's my 2 cents on it. I hope we get reparations, but most importantly, I hope we repair our economic thinking. I'll talk to you guys later. Be good. Peace.
In this segment of the video, we will be covering the understanding of Israel borrowing from their captors. It is a fact that this method of payment was written in law. An Israelite leaving servitude was to be paid their due wages. The purpose of this particular section is to give the understanding that there is nothing wrong with saying to the oppressor, give us what is due, that we may go and serve our Creator. The book of Malachi, chapter 3. For who may abide the day of his coming, and who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Most High an offering in righteousness. Then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem be pleasant to the Most High, as in the day of old, and as in former years. And I will come near to you to judgment, and I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers, and against adulterers, and against false swearers, and against those that oppress the hireling in his wages, the widow and the fatherless, and that turn aside the stranger from his right, and fear not me, saith the Most High of Hosts. This account of Malachi is concerning a few things. 1, it is concerning the judgment on nations. 2, it is a rebuke on Israel for continuing in disbelief. And 3, it is concerning the Most High's portion and what belongs to him. Seeing this scripture in its context shows us that absolutely no one should be using this scripture to collect tithes of any sort. The verse we are going to focus on in particular is Malachi 3 and 5, that we understand what it means to oppress the hireling in his wages.
Okay, so I remember seeing my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother lived across the street from me, and she was a sharecropper. and she got to see how wicked and evil that these people were. And you would think that they were fair, but they weren't really fair. They weren't giving you what you had deserved and what you had earned.
Behind the bureaucratic language, Johnson's directive was clear.
General Howard has to tell these former slaves that the land that they thought had been given to them by the federal government now is going to be given back to the former owners. And if they want to remain there, they're going to have to sign labor contracts to work as laborers on these plantations.
We're going to talk about sharecropping and the cycle of poverty. Okay, those are two things that you'll need to know. Very important topics, and they're key issues. Sharecropping. What is sharecropping? Well, the book will tell us on page 561 that sharecropping, a sharecropper is a laborer who works the land for the farmer who owns it in exchange for a share of the value of the crop. Okay, so this is the way sharecropping works. Okay, these are former freedmen. So what do they do first? Well, what do they need first to sharecrop? First of all, they need land. They need land, they need tools, they need, just like you see here, they need mules. Okay, so where do they get them? They get them from the rich, still rich, landowner or plantation owners. Okay, so as you can see here, they get their tools, they get their seed, and how are they going to get this? They don't have any money. Well, they're going to say that they're going to give them a percentage, okay, of the profit from selling the crop once the crop is done. Okay, what happens next? Okay, well, as you can see here, they harvest the crop. Okay, so they do all the work just as they did before when they were slaves. Okay, they also got a place to live, remember, so this might have been the same place they were living in when they were a slave. But who gets the money from all this? Okay, they had to pay for their crop. They had to, all right, so now the landowner sells or gives the tenant a share of the crop that he sold. He went to market. Now, I just want to put a little asterisk in this part. Do you think, just something to think about, that the landowner, plantation owner, when he went and sold the crop, do you think maybe he was always honest with his sharecroppers? Do you think maybe he might have gotten a few cents more per pound for a crop than he told them about? They were uneducated. Most of them were illiterate, which means they couldn't read or write. So do you think that there was the good possibility that they were cheated sometimes? Yeah, very, very good possibility.
And a lot of you young stars, a lot of you young have never heard of the term sharecropper, but go back and research what that term means, because this directly ties to these precepts, what happened to those people right after the end of so-called slavery. So it would behoove you to get that information under your belt, because once you start tying the timeline in with what the brother's presenting here, then you can definitively know that yes, you are the people of the book.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 24. You shall not oppress a hired servant who is poor and needy, whether he is one of your brothers or one of the foreigners who are in your land within your gates. In his day you should give him his hire, neither shall the sun go down on it, for he is poor, and set his heart on it, lest he cry against you to the Most High, and it be sin to you.
These two verses in Deuteronomy show that when one works, that very day they should be paid. Not the next day, not the next week, not 2 weeks later. This wicked system holds back payment in order to not only oppress the hireling, but to rob them as well, as those who are paid every 2 weeks would pay more taxes. What we are speaking of is Federal Reserve notes, but the gold and silver belongs to the Most High. The money we use in the land of our captivity has no value in the kingdom to come.
Reparations is saying you need repair. It's saying you've been damaged. It's saying you're hurt. So when we cry out to your abuser and you're telling them, I'm hurt, I need help, and we're saying this to the Gentiles who are in power, I'm damaged, I'm hurt, I need help. And they clearly tell you to your face, we're not going to give you nothing. And you go, are you even willing to look at my hurt? And they go, I am not even willing to look at it. Never mind, I'm willing to look at it to see if what you're saying is true, see if you're really hurt. No, what they're saying is I'm not even willing to look to see if you've been damaged, if I hurt you. They're saying no. So what is that doing? What that's doing is that's connecting the sins of the Father to the Son. So the Most High is giving Egypt, Babylon, the land of the north, their last and final opportunity to just do what's right. Just do what is right.
The gold, the silver, the jewels, and precious metals belong to the Most High. Just to be clear, every kingdom we were captive to gave what we required to leave, start over, and rebuild. In this kingdom, we will plunder our oppressor, as we did the Egyptians. Yet, let us give understanding. We spoiled the Egyptians. We did not borrow from them. The same things come to this nation as we see the cup pass from us to the heathen.
If you look at most of your industries, most of your main commerce gatherers, if you look at the insurance industry, if you look at your initial Wall Street exchange, the first property or product that was traded were slaves. If you look at the insurance agency, or insurance companies, they were started because they wanted to ensure if a slave died or ran away or something ridiculous like that, that they would be compensated wages for that loss of that particular property. So when we say that the West was built on the backs of the so-called African American, it is 100% truth. There's no fabrication in that.
And they got everything because of black people in the past and even to the present day. They need you. Look at all of these companies that are using prisons to make their products, to package their products, to sell their products, to pick their products off of farms. Look at all these companies. See, if they took the innocent black people out of prison, America would collapse, and so would all of these corporations you're looking at. Every last one of these corporations would fall without 14 to 21-year-old black males going to jail by cops that are walking up to you and starting a confrontation. You got to understand why this is all happening. Number one, they get paid for every arrest, so they don't care if it's an innocent person. They're trying to get paid. And the corporations are trying to get paid for the products that they're putting out through the prisons. It's all connected. Them telling you you're the most violent, the cops being violent to unarmed black people that are innocent, the prosecutor that knows you're not guilty, but move ahead with the trial and put you in jail, and the judge finding you guilty and the white jury finding you guilty and you're in prison. This is the reason why, ladies and gentlemen. This is why the whole thing is happening. This is why. Without you, there would be no America. America has never stood on her own without slaves. The whole country is heavily dependent on the melanated people. And the black people are in prison doing the labor for the corporations. The whole damn system is running on slavery. The whole system. If black people walk away, America would collapse. It would collapse. It would fall overnight.
The Zondervan's Bible Dictionary, page 130. The word borrow or borrowing. The Semitic people, as a general thing, have an eye to business, and it seems quite natural when leaving a place of service, whether as a hireling or a slave, to ask for a gift. In Exodus 3:22, 11:2, and 12:35, the King James Version unfortunately translates the verb sha'al, ask, by the verb borrow, and so gives the wrong impression that the Israelites cheated the Egyptians, and worse still, that the Most High encouraged this borrowing. The fact is that the Egyptians, thoroughly cowed by the rigors of the 10 plagues, were willing to give largely in order to get rid of their troublesome guests. The Most High, in His providence, allowed Israel to despoil the Egyptians in order to provide gold and silver for the tabernacle which was to be constructed. Surely the wrath of men shall praise thee. Psalms 76:10. The law of Moses gives careful direction concerning the responsibility of those who borrow, or who hold property in trust, or who are criminally careless in regards to the property of another. Exodus 22:1-15. Among the blessings promised Israel on condition of obedience is that they would be lenders and not borrowers. Deuteronomy 28:12 as reference. So, according to the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, it was a common thing for Shemites to ask for payment after they were set free, whether hired servitude or enslavement.
Comment in your new book here, Mugged, and I think it's on page 151. You write that various groups, feminist, gay rights groups, and those who are defending immigrants have commandeered the black civil rights experience.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that because I think it's one of the most important points of the book. I mean, I think the way liberals have treated blacks like children and many of their policies have been harmful to blacks. At least they got the beneficiary group right. We do have to, I mean, we shouldn't. There is the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow laws. We don't owe the homeless. We don't owe feminists. We don't owe women who are desirous of having abortions, but that's, or gays who want to get married to one another. That's what civil rights has become for much of the left. They dropped the blacks after 5 minutes.
Immigrant rights are not civil rights?
No, I think civil rights are for blacks.
The book of Leviticus, chapter 25. If an alien or temporary resident with you becomes rich, and your brother beside him has grown poor, and sells himself to the stranger or foreigner living among you, or to a member of the stranger's family, after he is sold, he may be redeemed. One of his brothers may redeem him, or his uncle, or his uncle's son may redeem him, or any who is a close relative to him of his family may redeem him. Or if he has grown rich, he may redeem himself. He shall reckon with him who bought him from the year that he sold himself to him to the year of Jubilee. The price of his sale should be according to the number of years. He shall be with him according to the time of a hired servant. If there are yet many years according to them, he shall give back the price of his redemption out of the money that he was bought for. If there remain but a few years to the year of Jubilee, then he shall reckon with him according to the years of service he he should give back the price of his redemption. As a servant hired year by year shall he be with him. He shall not rule with harshness over him in your sight. If he isn't redeemed by these means, then he shall be released in the year of Jubilee, he and his children with him. For to me, the children of Israel are servants. They are my servants, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. I am the Most High, your Elohim.
What we observe in the book of Leviticus is that if an Israelite was poor, he could sell himself to a stranger for a price, meaning he would work for this person for wages. His family members could redeem him, or at the end of his servitude, he could redeem himself by paying the price he was bought for. We also see there was a potential to accumulate wealth in the process. In the book of Leviticus 25:49, it says, "Or if he have grown rich, he may redeem himself." This verse shows that in a country that has become wealthy and mighty from the work of slaves, no one should be poor, especially those whose descendants were slaves of that country. Payment has not been fulfilled, nor has redemption been attained. The final kingdom has oppressed the hireling in his wages, in not just this order, but in all orders, as we will see according to the Most High's law.
You repaired the Japanese. You repaired the so-called Native American, which they are definitely not the people of the book. You also repaired the fake Jew. You repaired all of those entities, and matter of fact, you're still paying to this day the repairing of them. And yet, when you talk about repairing the ones who actually built the whole Western construct, you don't want to address that. Matter of fact, you are still reaping the benefits of that to this day.
They don't want to let us go. Despite all of that, give us our reparations and let my people go. Let us go. If we got low IQs and we're stupid and we're lazy, we're this, we're criminals, then let us go. Let us go. But see, letting us go will not come free of charge. So the sooner you come to the table with reparations, the sooner we can be out of your hair. There's a lot of people that want to start their own businesses, have their own land, leave the country, set up house somewhere else, but will certainly be out of your hair. You will get your wish. You would think you'd pounce on that. After all of the hateful things that have been said to us for centuries, you would pounce on it to get rid of us. But look, ladies and gentlemen, they don't want to let us go. They want to cling on to us and keep us at the bottom. Now, many of them will try to come and say, that ain't it, that ain't it. That's exactly it, ladies and gentlemen. Just disregard all of their psychobabble. If America really wanted to let us go, they could have sent us away centuries ago. But here they are, still clinging on to the economic benefits and gains they get from us spending in the economy. We're the most copied group on the face of the earth. A lot of great ideas come out of the Black community. A lot of trends come out of there, out of our community. Sports and entertainment, which are big industries that pour tons of money into America. Our $1.2 trillion being spent every year in their economy. But if you really, truly want us gone, give us the reparations. We'll leave you all alone. You'll be left alone. You will get your wish.
It did not address the fact that we have not yet paid that debt. Germany has paid $89 billion in reparations to Jewish organizations since World War II, and Ronald Reagan signed the American Civil Liberties Act, by which we paid every surviving member who had been interned during the World War II in the Japanese internment camps $22,000. I believe $100 billion given to a council that would apply this money to economic projects and educational projects of renewal for that population is simply a debt to be paid. And until we pay it, we will deal with these issues.
Now that reporter, that's interesting, he used the word symbolism. Now he don't agree with no reparations. I can tell you right now, the majority of white America don't agree with reparations. They don't. Trust me, they don't. They are not saying that at all. But it's not what the majority of them want or think. I believe we should discuss everything. But now let's put this up from her website and let's just kind of view this, because we need to talk about this and have this particular conversation. A lot of people were happy about it to a point, but there was a lot of people that was not happy in what Marianne Williamson is proposing. There's been multiple pushback from a lot of people. One of them stated that $100 billion is not enough. Now, at first, I was like, well, at least the conversation's out there, we can work on the number. But then I wanted to look at how many years was the actual Holocaust. And Germany has paid $89 billion, according to her. Now, the Holocaust, which everyone says, went from 1941 to 1945, okay? Slavery was 246 years. So if the Jewish people have received 89 billion so far, how did she come up with 100 billion for 246 years of free labor? And then the other thing that people had an issue with was the part that says the esteemed council, of African American leaders. The questions were, who are these African American leaders you're talking about? Who? Is it people that you deem as African American leaders? Is it what the people say? Because, okay, let's say you get this $100 billion, okay? We don't want a bunch of boule Negroes sitting up there talking about what they gonna do for the black community, telling you to disperse this money. We want people that know what they're doing and actually love black people, like someone like Dr. Claude Anderson. You couldn't have nothing like that going on without a Dr. Claude Anderson.
The book of Joel, chapter 3. Because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly and pleasant things, the children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold to the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither ye have sold them, and I will return your recompense upon your own head.
Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he reap. The heathen would tell you all people of the earth suffer. All people of the earth have been victims at one point or another. And this is true. The problem with their logic is thinking that we are equal to them, which we are not. They are children of the flesh, and we are children of the promise. It is about who they touched. We belong to the Creator of heaven and earth.
Correcting the past often means also imposing some consequences for people who are not directly responsible for what happened in the past, but were the indirect beneficiaries of what happened in the past. And that vastly complicates the resolution of such issues.
Hello?
You're on. Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. I think reparations is another division attempt. At some point, we have to, every single person, no matter what color they are, can go back and blame somebody for something. It's time to stop teaching incessantly in our public school systems about slavery. It's over 100 years old. You cannot keep charging people that had nothing to do with slavery for the guilt of being slave owners. It's time for us. Many white people have suffered injustice. We just have to move on.
Thanks, caller.
So I think I emphasized at the outset that I think that the case for reparations is not predicated exclusively on slavery. That it's critical that we take into account in our calibrations the long-term effects of the Jim Crow period. And I also indicated that there are ongoing damages that need to be considered. And I would highlight among these again, mass incarceration, police killings of unarmed blacks, and the immense magnitude of the racial wealth gap. So it's not just a question of addressing the harms of slavery. I think that, as I've said a number of times, if people believe that there are other communities or other groups that are deserving of some form of compensation, they need to make that case. But this is a case that's specific to the experience of Native Black Americans. And this experience is one in which I'm trying to take into account the long and cumulative trajectory of injustices that have been imposed upon this community, starting with slavery, but continuing through nearly a century of Jim Crow, as well as ongoing forms of racism that are still persistent to this day.
You see, everybody's entitled to reparations except for black people, because white supremacy has turned the world on its head. White supremacy has misshapen and perverted and twisted the entire global order into nothing more than a racialist pyramid scheme with black people at the bottom. We'll bring in a bunch of foreign-born Asians, and we're just going to drown these slave descendants in a whole bunch of foreigners. And the whole point is going to be this is a mass political operation geared toward trying to give us political cover to say, well, what you slavery descendants, what you guys have to say, that doesn't really mean much because we've got all these other groups here and they don't have the same gripes as you guys. So, nobody's concerns are really more important than anyone else's. Your concerns are certainly no better and certainly no more important than anyone else's. And this is deliberate because these other groups, they're still a tiny minority of the population. We, on the other hand, represent 1 out of 7 people in the country.
For to me, the children of Israel are servants. They are my servants, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. I am the Most High, your Elohim.
We are servants to the Most High and no one else.
The book of Obadiah, chapter 1. Thou shouldest not have entered into the gate of my people in the day of their calamity. Yea, thou should not have looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. For the day of the Most High is near upon all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thy own head.
So they raped, robbed, and murdered. They stole countries, wealth, and culture. They mocked, cursed, and raged against the truth. There is only one outcome. The bill is due, and payment is set. Yet the fools disregard the fact that the day would come. Righteous judgment dictates restitution for the victims and punishment for the wicked.
Their boot has been on the necks of people of color since we began. This is a nation founded on genocide and built on the backs of slaves. All right. So we started with a racial problem. We tried to actually eliminate one entire race, and then we used another race to build this country actually quite quickly as a new country into a world power. This country never would have had the wealth that it had it not had slavery for a couple of hundred years.
Okay, so if you look at the precept Malachi 3 and 5, where it talks about the hireling in his wages, let's take a look at what happened right after slavery time. What happened with the sharecroppers? What was done to them was unimaginable. You have them working the land, you still kill and destroy them from proper wages. Then you constitute and institute Jim Crow. And then what is Jim Crow in its connection with the prison industrial complex that we see today? And its further connection to the slave patrol and the current penal incarceration system, where you pay someone to work for pennies and sell those same goods and services at a huge profit.
Signature campaign promises is reparations for Africans and African Americans. So in order to implement this plan, we would have to reallocate that money from somewhere else. So where do you think we can allocate this money from?
Well, first of all, it's not a zero-sum game. So, when people want to do things like tax cuts for the very, very wealthiest, or invasions, invasions of countries that didn't even do anything to us, nobody asks where they're going to reallocate the money from. The issue of reparations is an issue that speaks to what I was saying before. We need to get real in this country. We need to talk about what's really going on in this country. I don't believe that the average American is a racist. I actually don't. But I do believe that the average American is vastly undereducated about the history of race in the United States. And at the end of the Civil War, there were 4 to 5 million slaves in the United States, and General Tecumseh Sherman promised at that time 40 acres and a mule for every former slave family. That money, well, most of the time that acreage was not given. Even when it was given, most of the time it was taken away. The economic gap, and remember that 2.5 centuries of slavery was followed by 100 years of what today we would call domestic terrorism. What do you call lynchings if not domestic terrorism? What do you call Ku Klux Klan if not domestic terrorism? Full-on institutionalized white supremacy and segregation. Even though we answered that with the Civil Rights Act that dismantled segregation, the Voting Rights Act that gave equal rights of voting to black people, even that we started chipping away at since 2013. We have mass incarceration. We have racial disparity in sentencing. This is not a debt we can afford to delay any longer. The economic restitution for 2.5 centuries of slavery followed by 100 years of domestic terrorism. Germany has paid $89 billion to Jewish organizations since World War II, and in 1988, Ronald Reagan signed the American Civil Liberties Act, where all surviving prisoners from the Japanese internment camps during World War II were paid between $20,000 and $22,000. It's simply a debt we owe. This country will not heal until we take a serious moral inventory. People, a nation must undergo the same level of deep moral inventory, admission of our character defects. Racism is a character defect. Let's end this. Let's fix this. Let's solve this. Reparations won't end everything, but it will be a profound gift. It implies a mea culpa. It implies a recognition of a debt owed, and therefore it carries not only economic power, but spiritual force. Whatever it costs, it's time to do this.
He said, it is too late, that America cannot be forgiven for her crimes and her sins against the chosen people of God. The scripture says, double unto her what she has given. Another scripture says, as thou hast done, so shall it be done unto you. Another scripture says in Exodus 21:16, he that stealeth a man and selleth that man, and if he be caught with that man in his hands, he shall surely be put to death. The white man admits he stole us. He admits he sold us from city to city, from plantation to plantation, from auction block to auction block. And now, in the presence of Almighty God, within the borders of the hells of North America, we are still in the white man's hands. He that stealeth a man and selleth that man, and if he be caught with that man in his hands, he shall surely be put to death. Another scripture says, as you have delighted in taking our blood, you will be given your own blood to drink like water.
When you see some light, that's a breakthrough. Concrete jungle, it's a damn zoo. Eyes wide, while they live on snooze. I'm hoping what you touch impacts some souls. Picture perfect, nigga, like a centerfold. I'm all about my bread, that's a dinner roll. Do it on my lonely, you can send the word. I remember drinking until my speech was slurred. But karma is the bitch, you better treat it right. It's power in these thoughts, she gave me might. But this your life, nigga, roll the dice. Eviction notice, try not to notice. But through your ups and downs, trying to find your purpose. Girded in this truth, blocking evil forces. Good intentions, create your invention. No huddle, fourth and inches. Keep on trying, heart of a lion. Keep on climbing on your way to Zion. Highs and lows, no time to fold. Since the snotty nose, I've been kinda bold. Keep on trying, heart of a lion. Keep on climbing on my way to Zion. Highs and lows, no time to fold. Since the snotty nose, I've been kinda bold. You headed to them streets, trying to fill the void. Trying to box with God, trying to win our Floyd. All these traps, gotta count the joy. I lift my voice up like a trumpet though. Wash away these sins and these transgressions. Change your outlook, that's your only weapon. But we the black Jews, these is mental Jews. Trying to set a pace while they drive on cruise. Can't trust their action, they intent is cruel. I'm from a sunny place where it's shady people. Erase your history and they say we equal. Do your all in this world, they make you feeble. Built these corporations, look how they treat you. Get up on your grind, I'm thinking ownership. I know your past mistakes equate to something better. He give visions to the blind, Helen Keller. Keep on trying, heart of a lion. Keep on climbing on your way to Zion. Highs and lows, no time to fold. Since the snotty nose, I've been kinda bold. Keep on trying, heart of a lion. Keep on climbing on my way to Zion. Highs and lows, no time to fold. But since the snotty nose, I've been kinda bold.